left off. So here we go. Okay, just give me a while I adjust my screen. Okay, so last week, what did we do? Well, last week we began our time by me giving all of us a quick overview of the module. Following that, we began to look into what seems to be some reasons that may make group counseling a viable option, which may make group counseling a good option in counseling. We found out that every reason that propose that group counseling is good, it can also work the other way. So what do I mean? So some reasons we discussed last week, reasons like efficiency. And we found out that even though efficiency is a good reason for group counseling, it usually comes with the price of compromising on depth, isn't it? And we found out also that this other reason about commonality means when we are in a group, we feel that we are not alone. While that is a good idea, while that is a good reason, what happens if we begin to find commonality in the wrong reason, isn't it? And we also found out that other reasons for good counseling could also be things like skill practice, right? Things like commitment, things like a sense of belonging. While all these reasons are great, at the same time, each of these reasons can also work against us if we are actually meeting for the wrong reason, isn't it? So this is where, in my opinion, group counseling can help. It can also work against us. So very much depends on how we evolve the group and how we are able to steer the group towards the right direction moving forward. Good. After that, what do we do? After that, we began to look into what seems to be the different kinds of groups out there in the marketplace. And we found out that more often than not, counselors to be or counselors, we typically will want to learn how to be leading a few types of groups. First type of group is what we call the psycho-educational group. Right, so you can remember this idea called psycho-educational group, right? And this is where, right, if we ever want to lead such a group, we have to be prepared to be playing both roles. What are the two roles? The two roles are this role of education, and also this idea about facilitation. So what do we mean by education? Here it refers to sharing information to the group, right? Sharing information to the group. And after we share information, this is where we want to begin to facilitate a discussion about how the group takes to the information that we just shared with them, basically. So very important. So it's really about balancing the role of education as well as the role of facilitation. Okay? And some examples of such groups, it could be running a parenting group. It could be running a premarital group. It could be running a marriage enrichment group, the kind of thing. So more often than not, such topics will be run in the context of a psycho-educational group. After that, we spoke about the idea of running a growth group. Right. So what is a growth group all about? Very simple. People join a growth group to really increase their self-awareness. Okay. That's the reason why, right? We use the word growth, right? So more often than not, how can we grow? Well, we grow as we begin to know more about ourselves. We grow as we become more and more aware about ourselves, isn't it? So this is where, more often than not, when clients join such a group, our job is to be planning activities. Our job is to be putting the group through different scenarios, different experiential activities, so that each of the group members can begin to get to know themselves a little bit more through this journey. Okay, so that's really what we mean by growth groups. And finally, we spoke about the idea of running counseling groups. So this is where, right, more often than not, counseling groups will become obvious after clients went through growth groups. Why? As I begin to become more aware about myself, about my blind spots, about my strengths, about my areas of growth, that is where I may then want to join a specific counseling group to help me to grow in a particular area of my life. So this is where, more often than not, counseling groups evolve after growth groups. Okay, good. And then we spoke about the idea of support groups as well. It's very important. Under support groups, we also talk about the idea of self-help groups. Major difference is really the leadership. For support groups, the leader is typically a professional counselor. Self-help groups, leader tends to be a lay person who is either a fellow struggler of the problem or a recovery of the problem. Got it? So typical example, AA, Alcoholic Anonymous, GA, Gambling Anonymous, the kind of things. Right? So more often than not, such anonymous groups will fall under self-help groups. But one thing is common, whether we join a support group or whether we join a self-help group, the format is roughly the same, which is what? Which is, it's really about facilitating group members to be encouraging one another, supporting one another, cheering one another on in the journey of recovery by leveraging on each member's story throughout the week. So that's really the major focus when we join a support group or even a self-help. Okay, good. After that, what do we do? After that, we began to look into this idea about how can we equip ourselves to become a good group counselor, isn't it? So this is where you can remember. Let me bring you back to the slides. Yeah. Okay, this one. If you look at the last slide, right? Oh, sorry, too fast. This one. Okay, yes, this one. So you can remember. So last week I mentioned to you that as you prepare yourself to become a group counselor, you may want to consider looking at a few things. Number one, it's really about accumulating enough experience working with individual clients, right? So in my opinion, if you can help it, try to accumulate quite a substantial amount of individual clients before you move into doing group counseling. Why? It's because as you do individual counseling, what happens? You are encountering different personalities. You are encountering different clients with different temperament. And guess what? As you begin to accumulate those experiences, when you lead a group, this is where in a group, there will be different personalities. There will be different temperaments. So all your individual counseling experience will serve you well when you eventually lead a group with multiple or different personalities. So in my opinion, accumulating enough or substantial individual counseling will actually provide a good platform for you to begin to do meaningful group counseling later on. After that, what do? Then you can begin to move yourself to experience with groups. Means what? So if I were to be you, even before you lead a group, you may want to consider being a participant in a group. You can be a participant in a growth group. You can be a participant in a counseling group. You could also be a participant in a support group. No problem. Why is that important? That's important because when you are a participant, what happens? You get to feel what is on the other side of the fence. Or you get to feel, wow, whenever the group leader do this, I feel good. When he does that, I feel terrible. So now you have first-hand experience. What is it like to be in the shoes of the client? So that when you eventually lead a group, hopefully all those awareness, all those experiences will serve you well when you sit on the other side of the fence, leading a group as a group counselor. After that, what do? After you have become a participant in groups, you can then move on to become a co-facilitator. This is where, instead of being the lead, you may just want to be a co. Why? So that you are given the opportunity to observe what a lead group counselor is doing. Wow, so you can take down all the notes. Wow, he does this well. He does that terrible. What happens? So now you are able, right, to absorb all this learning. When you eventually become the lead counselor, you can begin to apply these learnings into your group moving forward. Okay? And of course, after that, then you can become the lead counselor or the lead facilitator. Right? Second thing to remember, of course, is, right, you may also want to plan the type of groups you want to be leading as well. So you can remember, right? So if I were to be you, I want to first begin to lead a psycho-education group, followed by possibly a growth group. After that, that is where I may want to proceed on to be leading a counseling group. So there's another progressive kind of pathway you can be thinking about as you begin to journey to become a group counselor eventually. Okay, pause for a while. So there we have it, a quick summary about what we covered as of last Wednesday's lecture. Any questions for me before we get going for today? All okay, huh? Steady. Okay, let me give all of us a quick overview about how I'll be spending lecture number 2 tonight. Well, tonight, I want to first and foremost complete the remaining portions of lecture number 1 slides. So you can see that there's a bit more to go. I want to complete that. After that, I want to begin to introduce to all of you what are some counseling responses that we can use in the context of group counseling. Not forgetting, I want to spend some time unpacking for you the requirements for the group project. And then we'll call it a night. All okay? Steady, yeah? All right, let's get on the work, shall we? So here we go. Let me bring you back to the slides, the same one. So far, you can remember, I already completed the first 2 items. Right. Now let me move through the other items, right, on the agenda that will hopefully make you and I to become a more effective group counselor. Okay, good. So here we go. Now, over here. If you want to be a good counselor, very important, you have to be able to have good planning and organizational skills. So what do I mean? Now, more often than not, right, group counseling sessions actually require quite a lot of logistic planning. You'll discover that later on when you become a group counselor. What do I mean? You have to source for a good venue, right? You have to think through about putting up the venue to make sure that the venue is conducive for group counseling. Then you have to think about arranging for tea break, arranging for beverages. You have to think about making sure that the materials are prepared earlier on, whatever. So you will find that more often than not, if you want to lead a good group, it will really test you on your ability to be a good planner, ability to be a good organizer. Okay? So for those of us who struggle to be a good planner, struggle to be a good organizer, this might be an area that you may just want to brush up on even before you begin to lead a group. Got it? So there's something to remember. Good. Okay. Then, of course, we need to also have a good knowledge of the topic. Means what? Example, if I'm leading a counseling group focusing on how to better able to resolve conflicts, I better make sure I know the topic. I better make sure I am well versed about the topic. If not, how am I going to lead the group? Isn't it? So this is where Whatever group that you lead, make sure that you have the expert knowledge. Make sure that the topic you really are grounded in the knowledge about the topic. Because you can bet if you are leading an adult group, you will surely be challenged. I can assure you that. And when you are challenged, you have to make sure you show your group that you do have the credentials to be leading this particular group. Got it? So that's something for you to remember. Okay, good. Okay. Then comes this very important item which I want to share with you more. This one. Yeah. A good understanding of basic human conflicts. Let's talk about this a bit more. So, what do we mean by a good understanding of basic human conflicts? What has this got to do with leading a group? Well, now comes the reality. What's the reality? My friends, one of the scariest things about leading a group is you can be dead sure that there will be conflicts in any group that you will lead. In fact, there's a joke that we crack among counselors. We crack this joke. If the group that we are leading has no conflicts, we better be worried. So I say again, so there's a common joke among counselors, veteran counselors. If you are leading a group, every week peace and tranquility, every week full agreement, every week 100% cooperation. Hey, something is up here, man. Yeah, because more often than not, that is not the norm. In fact, if that is what we see week in, week out, more often than not, it could even be a sign of the group members going through motion, rather than really benefiting from whatever they are sharing in the group. Got it? So what that means for you and me is, when you want to become a group counselor, you better be prepared that there will be conflicts in the group that you are leading. In fact, if I were to be you, I want to expect conflicts. I want to be embracing conflicts. And eventually, I want to be comfortable with conflicts. So that's really a hallmark of a very, very good group counselor. Got it? So this is where let me introduce to you a term. Okay, a term. Let's get down to the word. This term. The term is okay. Right. So, what do we mean by this particular term called conflict avoidance? Now, if you're someone who is very afraid of conflicts, right? More often than not, whenever conflicts happen in front of your eyes, what happens? Usually two things will happen. One, we will freeze. Two, we will become disconnected with what is happening in the group. And three, what happens? We will tend to want to move the group on, other than to be focusing on the conflict. Got it? So if this is something that you are battling with, if this is something that you are very, very, very inclined to, right now, it's time for you to start to be dealing with this particular aspect of your life. This is the time where you want to begin to grow in this particular aspect of your life. Because when you lead a group, we cannot afford to be avoiding conflicts. We have to be comfortable with conflicts, or at least embrace conflicts. And we usually will want to help the group there and then to be dealing with conflicts as well. And we can't be doing that if we tend to be avoiding or escaping conflicts. Up to this point, my friends, are you still with me? Okay, right. So I got a feeling after tonight, none of you want to become a good counselor already. It's sounding more and more scary, isn't it? It's sounding more and more high level. So I don't want to lie to you. Yeah, group counseling is way more difficult than individual counseling, that's for sure. Once with more people, there will be more complications. More people, more dynamics to deal with. But that doesn't mean that we can't do it. It just means that we have to be better prepared in the way we deal with it. Okay, good. So that's the first thing. Number two, let me go back to the slides. Okay. So besides having a good understanding of basic human conflicts, we also need to have a good understanding of dilemmas. Dilemmas. So what do we mean? What do we mean by having a good understanding of dilemmas? Okay, now here comes. My friends, another common struggle that you will face when you work with any group is different members will normally be at different pace in the group journey. What do I mean? Let's say, for example, if I'm leading a counseling group of 8 people, right? I shouldn't be expecting each of the 8 people to be journeying at the same pace. Well, out of the 8, maybe 4, wow, super zealous, super on the ball. Wow, every week, wow, after we finish the group, wow, they'll be busy applying the things that I shared, whatever. Not. So maybe 4 out of the 8 are super on. Then maybe another 3 are sitting on the fence. They're thinking, okay whatever the Lawrence Ho say makes sense but not sure whether will that work for me. Not sure whether as I try this out in my life, whether will it bring me more benefits or more pain. Don't know. What happens? They are sitting on the fence. Then maybe 1 out of the 8 is becoming disillusioned. All this crap talk about anger, all this crap talk about conflict. Doesn't help 1 out of the 8 have decided to give up. What happens now? What happens now is, if I'm someone who cannot embrace dilemmas, if I'm someone who irks when clients are not able to make up their mind, what will happen? I will probably become very impatient with the 4. The 3 who are sitting on the fence, and the last one who seems to have become disillusioned. Can you follow me, my friends? Because in every group, no such thing as every group member is of the same page as the others. No such thing one. More often than not, there will be a different pace as we journey through the group. So this is where we have to be able to be working at different pace. We have to be able to be embracing clients at different phases in their journey in the group, rather than to be demanding that all of us should be at the same pace, which in my opinion is never a reality. In my opinion, that will never ever happen in any group that we lead. Okay, so it's really about knowing yourself and making sure that you prepare yourself for it when you begin to lead a group moving forward. Okay. Then let's talk about the last one. It's quite simple. The last one is the item. It's about having a good understanding of counseling theory. So last week, I spoke about the function of counseling theory, which is really about answering the 2 questions, the why question, and of course, the how question. Isn't it? And so you'll find that whether is it doing individual counseling, whether is it doing group counseling, the same thing applies. We need to be equipped with some counseling theories, because with counseling theories, it will begin to provide depth in the work that we do. Without counseling theories, you will find that group counseling sessions tend to appear to be rather shallow moving forward. That's why to be a good counselor, we have to also be equipped with some counseling theories as well. Of course, unfortunately, in our short time together, that will not be the focus. But I'll be covering counseling theories in the other modules that we'll be going for later on. So hopefully that application will then be brought forth when you do groups later on. Okay, we come out to join you. Questions for me about what I just shared, those points that will hopefully prepare you for the journey to become a group counselor. Anything to ask me?
Hi, Lawrence, evening. Can I just check with you? We were talking about the topics. Some are probably more difficult to handle, and some are. So, would you what are the topics like? They are the easiest to handle, and the topic that are the hardest to handle.
Okay, good question. I suppose, right, the what easiest and hardest, right, is probably also rather subjective to different people. And I guess, right, the topic about easiest and hardest has also got to do with our developmental life stage. So what do I mean? What do I mean? Now, for me, I'm coming to 51 years old, right? I suppose I have already lived through, right, the childhood days. I've lived through the teenage days. I've lived through the young adult days, isn't it? So some of the challenges that, right, the earlier stages of clients that went through, I probably will have some knowledge, or I probably have some life or first-hand experience about those issues already. So that may put me in a better position to be talking about those topics. That may be an easier topic to be talking about when I'm leading a group, right? But it's a double-edged sword. What do I mean? Sometimes, right, when we are addressing topics that we've gone through before, if we're not careful, we may also become rather pre-assumption. Means what? I may start to assume, all this crap about self-identity as a teenager, so shallow one. I've been through that, I've been there, I've done that. So what happens? So I may then become rather judgmental when I'm leading a teenage group, if I'm not careful. So while I may have the knowledge to talk about it, I also need to be open-minded, to be empathic with clients when they're in the group with me as well. So I guess the point about having knowledge about the topic, while knowledge is important, I think the ability to also be empathic, the ability to be open-minded is probably equally important as well.
Okay, thank you.
I guess to put it very simply to you, Christian, is this: I probably wouldn't want to talk about topics which I have, number one, no life experience on. Number two, I have not reached that particular developmental life stage yet. So I probably want to stay away from those topics if I can. Because if not, I'm putting myself in a position where the group might begin to have a basis to be questioning my credibility. So I guess I want to stay away from that if I can.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Christina. Good. Yes, Steph, go for it. I'm sorry. Oh, yes.
I guess, Lawrence, you can't be talking about motherhood then.
No, I can't be. I guess I can talk about parenthood.
So anyway, my question is about the understanding the counseling theories, right? Because I did your course just before.
Yes, previously, yeah.
Previously, and I know some of your the counseling theories that you are. Yes. But when you talk about knowing about counseling theories, like, is there particularly like group counseling theories, or is there like just a theory that can be applied individual and then applied to the group? And then the second part of the question is that, let's say, because you also say that you do one-to-one, and then you bring them into the group. So let's say you're implementing a theory on this one person, and then you go into the group. Do you carry that same theory with them, or do you incorporate a different theory to match the group? Like, how is your counseling theories?
Okay, good question. Now, usually, right, most counseling theories out there, we are able to apply those theories both in the context of individual counseling and also in the context of group counseling, usually. So, example, right? So for Stephanie, she already gone through the earlier module on introduction to psychotherapy and counseling. In that module, I actually covered 3 counseling theories. First one, it was on psychoanalytic therapy. Second, person-centered therapy. And the third was rational emotive behavior therapy. So for all those 3 theories, right, we can actually apply them both in the context of individual counseling as well as in group counseling. We can do that basically. So most counseling theories have the flexibility to be able to do so more often than not. Okay, so that's the first question. Second question. Now, if I were to be seeing every individual group member on the site for individual counseling, while I'm still seeing them for group counseling, do the counseling theories that I apply, does it have to be the same? Well, in my opinion, usually don't have to be the same. But I guess I wouldn't want to be applying opposites as well. What do I mean? If I'm applying different theories, right, I want to make sure that at least the gap is not so wide, so that my client do not walk away feeling more confused rather than clear, in my opinion. So there's no need to be applying the same thing, but I wouldn't want to be applying conflicting or opposites as well, generally. So that's what I'll do. Okay, good question. Good. Okay. Other questions for me about why this shared?
I have a question. So does this mean,
Jarin?
so does this mean like I have to be of a certain, I guess, age and experience in order to counsel someone then? Like, I mean, it sounds like, you know, you need to go through different kinds of experiences, but what if like, for example, someone wants to be a counselor, but has never really gone through like, let's say like marital issues, or let's say like childhood trauma, things like that. So like how I mean, going through that, how do you,
But okay, I suppose, right, if that's the case, I would rather you be gaining experience individually in a counselor context before you begin to lead a group revolving around that issue. What do I mean? Example, let's say, for example, if I'm now single, I'm not married. Now, before I even lead a group on marriage, for example, I may first want to venture into counseling individually clients with marital problems first. Making sense, Joanne? Because, right, as I begin to accumulate that individual counseling experience, right, counseling clients with marital issues, when I begin to lead a group for marital issues, right, at least I can have the credential of telling people that, guess what, while I'm still single, I've accumulated sufficient hours helping clients individually with their marital problems. So that will still add on to your credentials, if you ask me. Same thing. Now, I've led groups that struggle with addiction before. Now, I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do drugs. So what makes me competent to lead such a group? Well, it's because I've accumulated enough individual counseling hours working with individuals who struggle with addiction problems. So that gives me the credentials later on to begin to lead such a group, basically. So I hope I'm making sense in some ways, Jarin.
Yeah, so this means you just need to go through different experiences and
hopefully.
I guess,
That's right.
Okay.
Oh, no problem. Okay. My friends, like I said just now to I think to Christina's question, experience is a very funny thing. What do I mean? It can work for you, it can also work against you. Very funny, isn't it? Because a lot of times, right, when we have lived long enough, right, we sometimes may then become rather arrogant if we're not careful. We may sometimes become too assuming that my experience is representative of the whole entire world's experience, isn't it? And when that happens, I'm really in a very wrong place in counseling. So that's why I think it's always about being aware about using our experience to work for us and to know when our experience is beginning to work against us. So that's really the adjustments we have to make, whether it's individual counseling or whether it's in group counseling.
Lawrence?
Yes, Eugene, go for it.
Just talking about experience.
Yes.
Sometimes, how do one quantify their experience when no, I just a couple of probably an hour or two ago I saw this job opportunity, being a volunteer in one of these
Okay.
areas, then I look at the what are the criteria. So you say you need to have 300 hours of counseling experience and stuff like that.
Okay.
How do you quantify that if there's no recommendation on that? So like just like this now, if you want to do a group counseling experience, how do you
Yes.
tell someone I have done 300 hours unless someone else tells you that? So I see
Okay.
once I see later on the qualification, of course it says that you must have masters in that, you know. So
Okay.
it's like it's very subjective, this kind of experience
Sure.
kind of thing, you know. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So two things here. So number one is how do we go about accumulating such hours? And number two, how do we verify that we do kind of hours? Is that
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
Okay, good. So let me just answer that from two four. One, the first one. Okay, let me use the whiteboard to answer this. Okay, so put it here. Counseling hours. Now, one way for you and I to be accumulating counseling hours is sometimes part of a program. What do I mean? My friends, I'm sure most of us or most of you know that within TSPP, we actually run a particular program called Professional Diploma in Psychotherapy. If you happen to look at that program details, you probably would know that part of the criteria, right, to become an ICP member, right, is we have to be accumulating a certain number of counseling hours. Okay, if I'm not wrong, it's probably 100 or 120 counseling hours. Got it? So more often than not, right, when we go for a higher level of counseling program, usually part of the program will require you and I to be clocking what we call internship hours or practicum hours. Can you all follow me so far? So once you graduate from any of these programs, you can tell people, guess what? In order for me to graduate with this degree, with this master's, with this graduate diploma, I have clocked certain number of hours already. Got it? So that will lend credibility when you're applying for jobs. That will lend credibility when you're applying for voluntary experience, basically. So that's the first way that we can go about clocking these hours. Second way, now, after you graduate from a counseling program, now, as you work towards becoming a registered counselor with a professional association, you also need to be clocking hours in doing so. Let me give you some examples. Okay, come, let's do it. Now in Singapore, right, there are basically two professional associations that kind of safeguard the counseling standards in Singapore. The first one is called the SAC. The second is Apex. Okay. So here comes. Now, let's say, for example, I just finished graduated with a master's in counseling. I've accumulated 120 internship hours under my master's in counseling program, for example. Now, I want to work towards becoming a registered counselor with the SAC. Okay, what do? Well, the SAC stands for the Singapore Association for Counseling. They say that I need to be clocking 600 counseling hours within a span of 3 years after I've completed my master's in counseling program. So this is where, as I begin to accumulate those hours, I have to document it down somewhere. I also need to be getting my supervisor to be signing off for those hours. So this is where, after I accumulated all those hours, that will also become evidence that will support my application when I'm applying for jobs, when I'm applying for voluntary opportunities as well. Now, for Apex, I'm sure most of you know that TSPP, our programs are recognized by Apex. Most of the programs are, especially the counseling and psychotherapy programs. Same thing. Apex, they actually use another term. They use the term certified. Same thing. If you go into the Apex website, you will see that they have different criteria for different levels of certified membership. So same thing. Once you have completed, let's say, for example, you completed your professional diploma in psychotherapy with us, you want to begin to move towards becoming a certified counselor under Apex. Same thing. As you work towards that, you have to be accumulating X number of hours. Same thing. You have to document down, get your supervisor to sign off. Those hours accumulated will now become evidence for you to use when you're applying for jobs or you're applying for voluntary opportunities. Am I making sense? So yeah, a bit technical, I know.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
Makes sense. Okay, good. But usually that's for the question. Yeah, I guess it's always good for you all to be thinking ahead. Yeah, because like I said, some of you might be on this program just for general self-awareness. But I'm sure some of you are seriously thinking about becoming a career as a counselor. So I guess having all these things in mind, hopefully will help you to plan or to chart your course moving forward. Okay. This is Jeremy. Go for it.
Yeah, Lawrence, I have a question. So
Right.
I would believe that like organizations, right? There's going to be private ones and government ones, right?
Yes.
So, do the counseling hours differ differently? Like, would it be more hours for private agency? Or would it be more hours for government agency? Or does it vary? Yeah.
Okay, good question. I suppose, right, it will come down to one very major criteria, which is what position of a counselor are you applying for? So what do I mean? Now, if you are going to be applying for a senior counselor, then I suppose the number of hours of counseling accumulated has to be high. If you are applying for an entry-level counselor, I suppose more often than not, it will be generally revolving around what your master's in counseling program entails. And sometimes some companies may also want you to clock additional 2 to 3 years of experience before they hire you in. So I guess it very much depends on whether it's the company looking for fresh graduates or are they looking for maybe 2 to 3 years of experience of a counselor, basically. If that will be the case, then I suppose the hours they're looking for probably will be higher already. Versus if they want to hire a fresh grad, maybe the requirements will be a lot lower as a result of that. So I guess very much depends on the position they are hiring or the position they are applying for. I guess that will determine very much on the hours that they're looking for.
Thank you. Also, there's a last what about people who are like interested in creating like their own business? So if it's like a counselor with registered hours and all, and then they go on about to create their own business or something. Will there be any way to verify that?
Okay, so I guess for me, right, if I want to be having my own practice, I guess before I even do that, I probably will want to at least become a registered counselor with SAC or at least a certified counselor with Apex. Because that will actually lend a lot of credibility when I begin to publicize my service. Follow, Jeremy? So put it very simply is this, if I want to be having my own practice, I should at least clock the 600 hours under SAC. Get my registration, that I can publicize. At least now I have become a registered counselor with the SAC. I think that will serve me very well as I begin to build or to start my business in counseling, in my opinion. So that will be helpful. Okay, rather than for you, right, to straight away go in to start the practice, your business, while you just finish your program. I think that will probably make the general public a little bit skeptical about whether are we up to the standard or not, in my opinion. So I think it's probably better to at least get the hours under your belt so that you actually serve you well as you begin your belt. Thanks, Jeremy. Yes, Yuan Yun, I think so. I think I was sorry, only. Yes, go for it, Yuan Yun. You're muted, by the way. Yeah, you're still muted. I still can't hear you.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry, my headset's not working. Hi, Lawrence.
No problem. Go for
just
it.
a
Yes.
quick question on the accreditation, right?
Yes.
Because you mentioned the two main ones. Is there one
Yes, I
that
did.
might have like more weightage? Because I know in some countries, some organizations are more prominent than others.
Okay, wow, good question, man. I suppose you have to ask yourself, right, which country are we talking about here? Yeah, because, right, we're talking about the US, the UK. Then, in my opinion, right, you probably need to first get accreditation to that overseas professional association first, you ask me. So example, let's say, for example, if I'm thinking about going to the US to become a practicing counselor, first and foremost, right, I have to check out on the ACA website. ACA stands for the American Counseling Association website. Right, to make sure that first, the degree that I'm going for, is it recognized by the ACA? Two, the practicum hours I'm accumulating here in Singapore, is it considered credible over there? So these are the questions that you have to ask yourself first before you even embark on clocking the hours, in my opinion. And sorry, the third one, the supervisor who signs off the hours for you. Are there some criteria for the supervisor to be eligible to sign for you? Because in my opinion, in some overseas societies, they actually have certain criteria for who can sign for you and who can't sign for you. So it's good to check this out before you even begin to clock your hours.
Okay. And so in Singapore, does it matter which one you go for, whether it's SAC or Apex? Because I know that GSPP is accredited by Apex, right? So, right. But you can still register with SAC regardless of that.
Okay, good question. This part, right, I'm not very sure, to be honest with you. That means whether can you apply for both? My hunch tells me may not be able to. My hunch tells me, but it might be good to check it out on your own. My hunch tells me that. So it would be good to check it out on your own. But in my opinion, it's always good to be getting accreditation at least with one particular professional body. In whichever country they are practicing, that's always a good thing in my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Thanks. Rebecca, go for it.
Hi, hello. Can you hear me?
Hey, can, loud and clear.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yes.
So after my the module FMCC module, I went to so-called
module.
Family marital
okay, sorry.
Yeah, your module
that I teach, I can't remember. Wow, okay, yes. Yes, go for it, yes.
Yeah, I went to sort of like go through the exercises with one of my friends. So is it still considered counseling or the counseling practicum hours?
Okay, good question. Technically speaking, right? It's probably not considered a counseling hour. Number one, because right, it wasn't part of a program. Okay. Number two, it was also not part of an employment. So usually, right, when we talk about clocking counseling hours, right, usually we are looking at it from two angles. Whether was it part of a program, internship, or whether was it part of employment, which is you're already playing the capacity of a counselor or a volunteer counselor, that kind of thing. So I guess this is usually the two questions we ask ourselves, usually you ask me. So I guess if you ask me, probably I would say no, you ask me for now.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry to disappoint you. But good try. I'm so happy that you try out the ideas that I taught you. Yeah. Thanks. Yes, Steph, quickly.
Okay, just to
go for it.
Summarize it. So
summarize, yes.
To link it up together rather to link it.
Yes, go for it.
A group counseling, or if we become a group leader, are those hours that we can clock in? Or are those a different kind of hours?
Okay, good question. Now, same thing. You have to look at the professional association to see whether is there a ratio. What do I mean? Now, if I'm not wrong, right? Some professional association, they actually give a ratio in terms of out of this, for example, 500 hours, what is the percentage that it should go into individual counseling? What is the percentage that it should go into group counseling? The kind of thing. So for some associations, they do have some ratio involved. So it will be good for you to be checking out on the ratio so that as you clock, you have this goal in mind. You know the kind of idea? Rather than to assume that it's all embraced, basically, in my opinion. So it's always good to be checking it out. Oh, good. Yeah. Okay, good. Yes, Rebecca, I noticed your hand is still there. I thought you had a question for me. No. Oh, done with that. Okay, good. I move on again. Thank you so much for all the questions. Yeah, it really makes, at least it gets the class to be a bit more alive. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so let me go back again to the slides. All right. Okay. Now let me backpedal to talk about some other topics. It's still within this particular lecture one. Okay, here we go. Could I just invite you to read through this particular slide and we'll talk about it? Once you're done, could I trouble you to also read through the next slide? Yeah, that's right, as well. Yeah. Stopping over here. Stopping at here. This part here. Okay, yeah. Then we'll talk about it. Okay, all done? Let's talk about it. Okay, let me use a whiteboard. Now, no matter what group we lead, no matter what kind of groups we lead, a very important question to consider is always, what sort of leadership style should we be adopting, no matter what kind of groups we are leading in our career? Okay. Now, based on the two slides I just read, we are introduced to two types of leadership style. We have what we call the leader-directed, as well as the group-directed. Now, very important. Whenever you think about leadership style, I would like you to think about it in the context of a continuum. So what do I mean by this term called continuum? Come, let me show you. Well, think about continuum like a scale. Let's say now I present to all of you a scale. Now, on this side, we have leader directed. On the other end, we have group directed. Okay. So more often than not, right? a counselor, a group counselor, would be using both styles at different points in our journey with the group. The key question here is, what is the percentage that we tend to fluctuate on? So now let me make it more concrete for you. Now, if I happen to be leading a support group or a self-help group, guess what? Predominantly, my leadership style will be very much on this side. So I say again, if I'm leading a support group or I'm leading a self-help group, more often than not, the predominant leadership style that I'll be using, that I'll be adopting, will tend to be more towards group directed. Why? It's because the whole idea behind support group is about the members. It's about the members sharing the story. It's about the members commenting on each other's story. It's about the members encouraging each other. So this is where I will very much want to be passing the leadership, passing the bucket for the group to really be taking it forward. That's why I'll be adopting the group directed style a lot more than leader. On the other side, if I were to be leading a psycho-ed group, a psycho-education group, well, I would probably be leaning more towards here. Being more leader-directed more often than not. Why? It's because when the group comes, guess what? They know what they're in for. They're coming because they want to learn some information about parenting. They want to learn some information about marriage. They want to learn some information, let's say, about conflict resolution, whatever not. So they're already prepared that I am going to share with them some information. So even though after I share the information, there is facilitation, but you can bet that as I facilitate the discussion, I will be taking charge more. I will be directing the discussion in a very directive way. That's for sure. So you'll notice that I will tend to be leaning more towards leader-directed if I'm leading a psycho-educational group. How about if I'm leading a growth group or a counseling group? This is where you will find if I'm leading a growth group or a counseling group, I'll be in the middle. Means what? Means I'll be using both. I'll be using both leader-directed as well as group-directed. Very much depend on which stage we are at in group development. Means what? Example, when I'm leading a counseling group, maybe for the first 3 sessions, while the members are still new to one another, I may be adopting more leader-directed. Once the group becomes warmed up, once rapport deepens, once trust deepens, that's where I may begin to adopt a bit more group-directed. Got it? So this is where, I'll be using a combination of both styles to ensure that I'm really fitting to the stage of group development. Same thing, when I'm leading a growth group, same thing. In the beginning, everybody is feeling each other out. I may have to do more leader-directed. But after that, as the group begins to gain rapport, as the group becomes more comfortable with one another, that is where group-directed may actually be thrown in as well. Okay, so I guess, the continuum idea, this skill idea, in my opinion, is a good idea to have. If not, you may think that it's either or. My friends, more often than not, it's never either or. It's usually a combination of both. But the percentage of where we're leaning more towards, that can change. But more often than not, we have to be using both in our leading of groups moving forward. Let me come to join you. Hopefully I'm making sense. Questions for me about what I just shared? Hope I'm making sense to you. Okay, quickly moving on. Now let me touch about something else, quite linked, same, but different. Okay, let me share with you this. Okay. Could I invite you to read through from here? Okay, filling over to the next page. Okay, stopping here will do. That means start reading from slide 17, the heading here, spilling over to next slide, slide 18, stopping here. Okay, then we'll talk about it. Okay, almost there. Okay, let's talk about it. Let me use a whiteboard again. Okay, now, the last two slides introduce two I words to all of us. The first I word is called intrapersonal. The second I word is called interpersonal. First and foremost, let me unpack for you what these two words basically mean. And then I'll apply it to the context of group counseling. Okay, so here we go. My friends, in order to understand the word intrapersonal, we have to first understand the word intra. Now, when we look at the word intra, what exactly is the word intra referring to? Well, the word intra refers to within. So I say again, the word intra refers to within. Put it very down to earth, it means inside. Inside, within. Within what, you may ask? Within our personality. Within our personality. Got it? So intrapersonal means within a person's personality. That is what intra refers to. Intrapersonal refers to. Now, when we look at the word interpersonal, once again, the word inter refers to between. Okay? The word inter refers to between. So probably going to ask me, so Lawrence, when we say interpersonal, what are we talking about? Between what? Well, interpersonal here refers to what is happening between two or more personalities. Got it? So I say again, when we talk about interpersonal, we are talking about what seems to be happening between two or more personalities, two or more individuals. Up to this point, are you still with me? Okay. Now let me apply it to group counseling for all of you. My friends, now comes another bad news about group counseling. Now, another reason why group counseling is so much tougher to do is because it really stretches our observational skills. What do I mean? When we do individual counseling, what happens? All we have to do is observe the client. That one person sitting opposite me, right? All I have to do is observe what is happening within this client. As I ask this client all these questions, is the client crying? Is the client getting angry? Is the client appearing joyful? I just have to focus on what is happening to my client, isn't it? Difficult, but at least manageable. Second, I also have to be observing what is happening between me and this one client, isn't it? Are we getting along? Are we having more conflicts? Or are we having more arguments? Or are we working well together? What am I doing? I'm observing what is happening between me and this particular one client. Can you all follow me, my friends? Difficult, but it's still within our range of observation. It's still within our range of manageableness, basically. But when we begin to counsel group, this is where the difficulty gets multiplied by tenfold. Means what? As I'm leading the group, I have to be what? Observing how each of the 10 members, how each of the 8 individual members, how are they responding individually? What is happening inside them as the group progresses on? I have to look at each of their faces. I have to look at how each of them are responding to the group. Haven't finished yet. I also have to look at what? How is the dynamics between the group members? Is this group member getting along with this group member? Is this subgroup getting along with this subgroup? Are the group members okay with me? Is my relationship between me and them, are we getting along well? Can you see, my friends? Now we are really what? Crossfire lah. It's like, it's like in war, you don't know where the bullets are coming from, man. Out of the blue, you can now one bullet from somewhere, blindsided. That is why group counseling ain't that easy to do. Because there's so much things that we have to be observing. So pretty very simply to you and me is this. If you want to be a good group counselor, it's not about either we are intrapersonal focus or interpersonal focus. No, my friends. We have to be able to be both intrapersonal as well as interpersonal. Let me go back to the whiteboard to hammer this home to you. So same thing, So if you want to be a good group counselor, it's never about either or. Nope. It's really about both and. Means it's really about being mindful of both intrapersonal dynamics as well as interpersonal dynamics. Let me ask you a very difficult question, okay? And not easy to answer, but think about it. What happens if I only focus on intrapersonal as I lead a group? I only focus on how is individual member responding? What happens if I'm only an intrapersonal group counselor? What do you think will happen in the group that I'm leading?
Burnout.
Burnout. Okay. So who will burn out? I will burn out lah. Usually.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, yes, possibly. I might get burn out. What else? How about from the angle of my group members? If I'm only adopting an intrapersonal perspective, how is each of my group members?
Maybe you will be favoritizing them individually.
Okay, if I'm not careful, I may begin to show favoritism, maybe to some individual members more than others. Awesome. What else?
The group members are not bonding with each other.
Spot on. Thank you. You're right. Spot on. Now, what's happening here is this. Individual group members are bonding with me, isn't it? But they are not bonding with one another. In other words, right, I'm actually doing individual counseling in a group. What's the point? I am not leveraging on the potential of what groups can bring. Can you all follow me, my friends? Might as well I meet the 10 of them individually, isn't it? It'll make my life easier, isn't it? So this is where, right, as I adopt purely the intrapersonal view, I am losing out on the group benefits. What happens if I am purely an interpersonal group counselor? That means I don't really care about how individual members are taking. I only bother about the dynamics. Are they getting along? What is happening between the members? What is happening between me and the members? That's all I care about. What happens? If that is the style that I'm adopting, what do you think will happen to the group?
The individuals don't get the depth.
Spot on. Yes, spot on, Stephanie. You're right. So what happens here is, while I'm leveraging on the group dynamics, what I'm compromising on is individual members. They don't really get the attention. Individual members, they are not feeling that I'm bothering much about their growth in the group. Okay, follow me, my friends. So that's the reason why, to be a good group counselor, we have to be able to take care of both. Not very easy, but that is something that we all aspire to be. As I tell you this, my friends, I can tell you that I also do a bad job for certain groups as well. Really. I'm someone who is pretty good at interpersonal work, really. But sometimes, right, I get too carried away as I observe all the interpersonal dynamics until I forget to be looking at how individual members are responding. So that's on me. Whereas some of my other friends, they are very good at intrapersonal, but they are not that observant about what is happening between group members. They will experience their own set of problems as well. So all of us, we have our own battles to fight. But the key thing here is, as we keep learning and growing, we hope that we are able to be marrying the two together. Okay. Quickly moving on. I know time is up. Okay, I'm going for a break soon. One more thing to take a look at. We'll go for a break. Something that's quite easy to understand. Okay. Can I just get you to read through this slide? 19 spilling over. Okay, 19 will do. Yes, 19. Look through this. We'll talk about it. After we go for a break. Okay, let's talk about it. Back to my whiteboard. Okay. We're introduced to two terms. What are the two terms? Two terms are content and this other term called process. Now, let me tackle the word process first, and then I'll come over to tackle the word content. Now, the word process, my friends, sounds a lot like interpersonal, isn't it? So I say again, if you go back and read the definition of process, you probably will find that the definition of the word process seems to be very similar to what I spoke about under the interpersonal leadership style. So you're right. When we talk about being process orientated, sorry, no space. We are basically being interpersonal orientated. In other words, right, in counseling, whenever we talk about, oh, I need to be more process orientated, we're talking about, I need to be more conscious about what is happening between members. I need to be more mindful about what is happening between group members. So the word or the term process orientated is the same thing as interpersonal orientated. So far, can follow me, my friends. That's important to remember. Good. Now, when we talk about content, okay, this is where we are being a bit more goal orientated. So what do we mean by being goal orientated? The goal here is really referring to why are we coming together for? What is the purpose of why the group was there in the first place? Is it to support each other? Is it to share information? Is it to work on a specific aspect of our life? So the here is we want to also be content orientated. Means we want to always be keeping the overarching goal in mind, the overarching purpose in mind of why we are gathering together, why we are coming together for this group. Got it? So once again, if you want to be a good group counselor, we have to be able to be both content orientated as well as process orientated. Why? If I'm only process orientated, after a while, I get sucked into the politics. I get sucked into the backstabbing. I get stuck into the political games that's being played by members, and I forget why are we gathering in the first place. Got it? So that will be quite sad. But if I were to be only content orientated, guess what? I might be moving towards the goal with no followers. Because I may think, oh, we are all going towards this goal. But I'm not even aware that between members, they can't stand each other. Between members and me, they can't stand me. Between subgroups, they can't stand each other. In other words, as I charge towards the goal, I got no followers. As I charge towards the goal, I'm only doing that solo with no followers behind me. Can you all follow me so far, my friends? That's why we have to be mindful about both content as well as process. So if you have forgotten whatever that I say, right, let me make it very simple for you. So one more thing, then we go for a break. Yeah. We spoke about the idea of, right, leader directed, right? And group directed. We have to do both. Right? Same thing. We spoke about the idea of intrapersonal and interpersonal. Same thing. We have to do both. Finally, we spoke about the idea of content and process. We have to do both as well. That is what makes group counseling of a higher level than individual counseling, because we have to be capturing so much more when we do group counseling. Not very easy to do, but it's definitely worth the while to get ourselves trained for it. That's for sure. Okay. All right. Okay. Any questions for me about what I just covered? The 3 dimensions.
It sounds really like structural family therapy.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's right. In fact, Eugene, you're right. In fact, doing family therapy, right, is a lot similar to doing group therapy. A lot similar. You're right.
Yeah.
So for those of you who have not gone for that module, right, I'll be teaching this particular module called Family and Marital Counseling later in October. Right. When you get to that module, you'll know what I mean. Because in the family counseling setting, same thing. I have to be also bothered about how or what's happening between family members in my family session. I have to be also bothered about how each family member is reacting to me, the kind of thing. So it's quite similar to what I'm doing in the context of group counseling as well. All right. Well, yeah. So Eugene, good observation. All right. That's why anything that involves more than one people, right, usually becomes more complicated.
Yeah, I read about Minichin's idea of the intrapersonal and yeah, thanks.
That's right. Oh, quite complicated. That's right. Yes. Other questions, comments for me? Okay. Okay. Time check. Now it's coming to 8:25. If you can be back by 8:35, we'll pick it up from there. See you guys in 10 minutes. All right. If you can rejoin back the class to be most helpful. Thank you so much for doing that. Right. Before we continue further, any questions about what I covered before break time? Anything you want to ask me? Not clear about to clarify. Okay, good. So now, before we proceed any further, I felt it would be a good time for me to talk about the group project followed by the examination. Will it be okay? Can steady. So here we go. Now, I think Karen probably will have emailed to all of you a particular write-up on group project. Have a look. I think it's called guideline on something, group assignment or something. Good. Okay, never mind. For those of you who didn't receive it, no worry, I'll upload it for you here in the Zoom chat. Oh, so here we go. Hang on, let me upload it here. Okay, give me a minute. Okay. Oh, got it. Thanks, Steph, for the information. Thanks. So it was sent via Dropbox. Okay, got it. Thanks. Hang on. Give me a second. Yes, one. I just uploaded the document in your Zoom group chat. It's called Guidelines for Group Assignment, bracket student. So for those of you who have not received it or you didn't download it from the Dropbox, you can be downloading it over here from the Zoom group chat. Okay, good. Let me show you how it looks like. We'll talk about it. Okay, let me make it a bit smaller so you all can see it. Okay. Could I just invite all of you to have a quick read about this particular write-up, and then I will spend some time unpacking for you the requirements. Okay. So for those of you, you may want to read it off your screen. Just scroll it down in case you're waiting for my screen. Let's scroll down in case you're waiting for my screen. All done? Am I still reading? Let me give some more time. Okay, come. Let me slowly unpack for you the requirements for this particular group project. Okay, then I'll invite some questions from the floor later. Okay, so here we go. Okay. Now, for this particular group assignment, right, there will be 3 components to it. What are the 3 components? The first component is all about your group paper. Your group paper, which I'll come to share with you more in a moment. Second component is your group presentation. Okay, that is the second component within your group assignment. The component is what we call this mock-up group counseling session. Okay. Got it? So these are the 3 components that comprise of your group assignment. Now let me go into the details of each component. Okay. Now, before that, let me first give you the weightage now to appease your worries a little bit. Okay. Now, because this is a diploma program, I'm also mindful about setting realistic expectations for all of you. Now, if it's a degree program, it'll be a whole new different ballgame. Okay. Now, because it's a diploma program, I'll be giving weightage in this way. Group paper will occupy 30%. Group presentation will occupy 10%. And finally, mock-up group counseling session will also occupy 10%. All in, we're looking at a total of 50% for your group assignment. So far, still with me? Okay, now let me continue. Now let me zoom in to look at your group paper. What are the requirements for your group paper? So here we go. Let me go back to the handout. Okay, here we go. Now, for the group paper, if you look at the objective, the first objective, it will give you a good summary. For your group paper, you are required to do some research. Research on what, you may ask? Well, research on how group counseling can be an effective therapeutic intervention for a specific group or client issue. Sounds very complicated, right? Now let me give you some examples. Now, what do we mean by a specific client issue? Now, example, it could be teenagers who are struggling with smoking. What do you call that? We call that a specific client issue. What's the issue here? The issue here is smoking. What's the population? Teenagers. Can you follow me? Another example, it could be children who comes from single parent families dealing with low self-esteem. What's the issue? Issue here is low self-esteem. Population, children who comes from single parent families. Got it? Another example. Quite a while ago, there was a group that did on the topic, very interesting, on HIV patients battling with low self-esteem. What's the issue? Low self-esteem, population, HIV patients. Got it? So that is what we mean by a specific client issue. Now, once you are able to identify the specific client issue, you are to then do some research on how effective can group counseling be in helping this particular specific client issue? Let me give you an example. Let me go back to whiteboard, give some examples. So example, you may want to be researching on a topic like effectiveness of group counseling in helping teenagers, for example, who are struggling with smoking. Let's say smoking addiction, for example. What has happened? What is the specific client issue here? The specific client issue is teenagers who are struggling with smoking addiction. Right? You are required to research on how effective group counseling can be in helping teenagers to either reduce the smoking addiction or to even get rid of their smoking addiction. Can you all follow me so far, my friends? Another example, you can also maybe research on, for example, another example could be effectiveness of group counseling. Okay. In helping, for example, unemployed, unemployed adults in managing low self-esteem. Okay. Part of my work opens up opportunities for me to work with unemployment. Especially, there's a term that we call it's called LTUs, long-term unemployment. And you will find that sometimes when a person gets unemployed for a long time, more often than not, it will take a dent on their self-worth. Especially if you have been used to working all your life. You have been used to providing for your family all your life. Suddenly, when you're either retrenched or you are made redundant or you are fired for whatever reason, right? Suddenly, as you struggle to find new employment, more often than not, you might start to deal with anxiety, depression, and possibly even a depreciated sense of self-worth. Okay? And I've led a group before where we look at how can we help this population to battle with low self-esteem. Got it? So that could be another topic that you can be researching on. Can you all follow me so far, my friends? Up to this point. Okay. So, my friends, if I may give you a hint here, will be this. Now, before you even start, right, to do the actual writing of the paper, right, you may want to do the pragmatic thing. What do I mean by the pragmatic thing? Now, sometimes, right, when we do a group project, it's about balancing between what? It's about balancing between interest and feasibility. What do I mean by balancing between interest and feasibility? What do I mean by that? Now, your group may be very interested, for example, in this particular topic that I just shared. Right? But given the time constraint, given all your conflicting schedules within your group, right? Given the amount of research that's out there available for you to search on, it might not be that feasible a topic to work on. Can you all follow me so far, my friends? So the challenge, right, for you in your group is, while you want to do something that all of you are highly interested in my opinion, right, you also to ask yourself, how feasible is this topic as your group begins to embark on working on it. Got it? So always remember to balance these two agendas as you tackle this particular group project, in my opinion. Okay? Okay, good. So now let me share with you, how should you go about writing this particular group project? Let me go back to the handout. Okay. So here we go. Now, I've given all of you a guide in terms of how your group project should be organized under. So first, it will be introduction. This is where you are to introduce to me the specific client issue. Okay, so if you are researching on what long-term unemployed people, right, battling with low self-esteem, under introduction, you are to provide for me background about this particular issue. If it's possible, you may want to be focusing more on the local scene. Because, like it or not, we are really talking about Singapore. But if you can't find information about local scene, no problem. You can still share with me the background introduction of this issue in the global scene. No problem, huh? But if you are able to find information on the local scene, that would be preferred, in my opinion. But like I said, do what you can. Do what you can. I'm looking at effort. I'm looking at effort. So I will understand if you really can't find local information. No problem. But the key thing here is try local. No local, then you go global. No problem. You can do that. Okay, good. After you have done the introduction on the specific client issue, what are you to do? Then you can move to the second item, which is literature review on how group counseling is helpful to this particular specific issue and population. Now, what do we mean by this particular term called literature review? It just means research. So over here, right, for second item, right, you are to be researching on, are there some authors out there? Are there some journals out there? Are there some books out there that seems to suggest, that seems to propose that group counseling can be helping this particular population to deal with this particular issue? This is when you have to be mentioning research. You have to be paraphrasing from research to tackle this second particular item. So talk about research here, it can be either from books, it can be from journals, it can also be from internet sources. To this point, are you still with me? Okay, good. Let me continue. Now comes the third topic, the third item. Okay, third item. Okay, so I've just completed the first one, introduction. I've completed the second one, literature review. Now we come to the third. Now, the third is about what? The third is about what might be some contents of group counseling sessions. What do I mean? Once again, for the third item, you also need to be doing some research. Meaning, if you are to run a group counseling program for this particular population, what might be some contents which you want to be covering? And the contents that you are proposing in this group assignment, it should be informed by research. Example. Let's say I'm researching on, right, effectiveness of group counseling for long-term unemployed people in Singapore, dealing with low self-esteem. What do? For this particular item on contents of group counseling sessions, I want to be researching on what does the research out there says about what might be some topics that I should be covering when I eventually deliver this particular group counseling sessions with this population. Got it? So the contents has to be informed by the research that you are doing. Friends, for those of you who know me well, you know that I'm quite a pragmatic lecturer. Means what? My friends, as you work on this particular group project, right, I'm not looking at this group project to be just an academic activity. What do I mean? I'm looking at this group project as potentially resource for you when you eventually become a group counselor. What do I mean? Let's say, for example, the year is 2022. Let's say after this module is over, you went on to do further study to become a counselor. Let's say at 2025, you are now a full-fledged counselor. You now decide that you want to run a group. Guess what? You may want to go back to this particular research that you have done. So if you have researched painstakingly on how group counseling can be effective for this population, these will become justification for you to tell your boss, hey boss, I did this research 3 years ago, even though it's 3 years ago, but guess what? These are the justifications, right, that will warrant us to really consider running a group for this population. And not only that, if you have painstakingly researched on the contents, guess what? Now, there's no need for you to reinvent the wheel. You can literally revise all the contents. Voila, you can start to actually execute the group with very little preparation. Can you all follow me so far, my friends? So I always believe doing project should never be just for the sake of academics. It should always be serving a few agendas along the way. Always believe in that. Yeah. Good. After you have done this, then finally, the fourth item, conclusion. This is where you can just conclude. This is where I would like to hear from the group, your group's personal opinion about just how truly effective group counseling can be for this particular client issue. Okay, so conclusion is where your group is allowed to really share your personal opinion. So your group can agree with the research, what they say. Your group can also disagree with what the research says. Or your group could agree with some. It can also disagree with some as well. So very important. So it's really about me hearing from your group, your personal take about what you have done in the other sections of your group paper. So put it even simply for you to remember is this. For the first 4, intro, lit review, contents, these 3 items, you have to be using APA. Meaning, right, you should be paraphrasing what you research on and presenting that in your group paper. When it comes to conclusion, this is where I want to hear from the group your personal take. Personal take. Okay. So for conclusion, whether you mention any references or not, that is no longer that important because I'm interested to hear from the group your personal take about what you research on for this particular topic. Okay, now let me invite some questions. Okay, before that, now you're probably wondering about the word count, right? Over here. The word count will be 2,000 words. You are allowed to go beyond 2,000 by 10%. You are allowed to go under 2,000 by 10%. Now, this particular word range, word limit range, excludes references. So I say again, it excludes references. Okay. So that is the range I'm looking at. You can exceed by 10% of 2,000. You can also go under 2,000 by 10%. No problem. Okay, let me invite some questions. I'm sure you will have some. Then we talk about the other two components later. Questions for me about the group paper first. The other two components, we'll get to that later. Yes, Steph, go for it.
Sorry. So for the group paper, it's one paper per group, right? And then because if you're doing the APA format, that means everybody's name is on that one paper.
You got it. Spot on. Good. Spot on. Yeah,
and it's APA, and it's now APA format 7 edition still, right?
Yes, I would think so. No, so to be honest with you, I'm not that particular about whether are you guys using version 6 or 7. To be honest, I'm not that particular. For me, right, I'm looking mainly at the content and also your diligent attempts in making references, both within the assignment and at the end when you have a references list. So that's what I'm looking at mainly. So whether you use the version 6 or 7, I'm not that particular about it, to be honest with you. Yeah, sure. So let me just summarize what I just mentioned to Steph. So every group, you only need to submit one group paper. Got it? I say again, every group, you just have to submit one group paper will do. Okay? Yeah. So this is where you have to distribute work, isn't it? The 5 of you distribute your work so that everybody has a stake in making the group paper happen eventually. Okay, good. Thanks, Steph. Yes, Mira, go for it.
Hi, Mr. Lawrence.
Hey,
hi.
Do
you mind explaining the contents of group counseling session again one more time?
Can, no problem. Let me go a bit further. Good. Yeah. Example, let me go back to my whiteboard again. Thanks for the question, Mira. Okay, let me go back to my whiteboard again. Example again. Let's say, based on research, I found out typically, if I am going to do group counseling for the long-term unemployed people in Singapore, it's typically 6 sessions. Let's say, what do I do? This is where, right? Under the contents of group counseling, I want to be proposing for session 1. What topics would I want to be covering for session 1? Session 2. What topics should I be focusing on for session 2? Session 3. What topics do I want to be focusing on for session 3? All the way until session 6. Got it? And whatever that I write here, it should be informed by research. Say, for example, you didn't manage to find so much information. All you found was, if a counselor is going to do group counseling for this issue, he or she should be covering the following topics. No problem. Then all you have to do is just to summarize for me what research suggests are the topics. Oops, hang on. Give me a second. I lost my whiteboard. Hold on. Go back again. Yes. So all you have to do is just write down what are the topics that the research out there suggests that you should be covering when you are running group counseling for this particular client issue. So you can do that. Mira, I hope I have answered your question to some extent.
Yes, Mr. Lawrence. Thank you very much.
No problem. other questions for me about the group paper before I talk about the other two components?
Hi, Lawrence.
Hello, Ying.
Hi.
Yes,
Yeah,
Fred.
just an extension to your response to Mira's question. So
Yes.
because the contents of the group counseling session is under part C, which A to C is all to be backed by research studies. So
Yes,
if I
you're right.
understand you correctly, it's regardless of whether what we feel should be in a counseling session. It really has to
You're
be
right.
someone or some journals or some studies that say it has to be in this manner. So we just
got it.
list it down and we just summarize
You
what
got
we
it.
find.
You
We
got it.
shouldn't put in
Spot on.
anything that we feel it should be in, that kind of thing, like only in section D,
Yes.
where we
Spot
can
on.
say some of our thoughts.
That's right.
Okay,
Spot
sure.
on.
All right, thank
Yes,
you.
you
Just
got
to
it.
clarify
Yes.
that.
All right.
Yeah.
No problem. Very good.
Thanks.
That's a good summary, Ying. Yes. good.
Okay.
Thanks. All okay so far? Yeah. Now let me talk about the other two components. Very simple already. The other two components, huh? Come. So for the other two components, let me first talk about the group presentation first, shall we? So here we go. Okay, so here. Now, for the group presentation, you are given for each group 10 minutes, right? So very simple. In the 10 minutes you are given, right? I just want every group to focus on presenting here. Right? Item 2 and item 3. In the short 10 minutes, right? Every group, you just have to present what you found in your research for item 2 and item 3. Meaning, based on our research, this is what we found are the reasons why group counseling will be very beneficial for our target audience. And based on research, this is what we found are the suggested topics that one should consider when we are running a group counseling program for this particular population. Got it? So given the short time that every group has, you just need to cover and present these two particular aspects. Very important. As part of your submission to me, you are to also submit to me a set of your PowerPoint slides for your group presentation. One more thing to remember, for your group presentation, every single member of your group needs to have a part in the presentation. So example, if you have 5 people in your group, right, make sure that all 5 of you have a stake in what presenting this particular group project to all of us. So that's important. Making sense to you? Yeah. Any questions about second component? Good. Quickly moving on. Now we come to the third. The third is what we call a should be down for you. Yeah. A mock-up group counseling session. So, what do I mean by a mock-up? Come, let me unpack this word for you. Now, the word mock-up here means, right, that you are allowed to prepare for it. I say again, the word mock-up here refers to you are allowed to prepare for it. So what do I mean? Usually, right, when you go for counseling training, right, at the end of the course, usually there will be a role play that you have to do. And usually the role play is where on the spot, you have to do the counseling role. And your examiner, which is me, I'll be observing how are you applying the skills that I've taught you during the course. So that's what we mean by spontaneous role play. Got it? So you can't really plan for it. It's really on the spot. But because this is group counseling and it's a diploma program, I allow your group counseling session to be planned for. So what do I mean? So here we go. Now, every group, you are to come up with a transcript. So what is a transcript? You may ask me. A transcript is a document that captures the conversation that takes place in a counseling session. So I say again, a transcript is a document that captures the whole entire conversation that takes place in a counseling session. So during lecture number 3 onwards, which is next week, and 1 week after next, I will be giving you a sample format on how a transcript should be looking like. Because I'll be getting all of us to be watching 2 to 3 real group counseling sessions with a transcript for you to follow along. Got it? So I will talk more about the transcript format when we get there. Got it? But for now, I wanted to prepare all of you first that you need to be planning this particular mock-up group counseling session by coming out with a transcript. Now, what should you be showcasing in this mock-up group counseling session? Well, you should be showcasing the counseling responses. You should be showcasing the counseling responses that I will be covering from tonight, lecture 2, all the way until lecture number 5. In other words, from tonight onwards, all the way until lecture 5, whatever counseling responses I covered, you should be thinking about showcasing these responses in your mock-up group counseling session. So far, you're still with me. Now comes the good news for you. What's the good news? On the actual day, when you are doing the mock-up group counseling session, well, you can actually be reading from the transcript. Got it? You can be doing that. Mock-up. So I guess, it's just for me to see whether through your transcript, are you guys applying the responses in an appropriate manner or not? Got it? So at this level, if you can get this right, in my opinion, you would have achieved something. At the degree level onwards, be prepared. You have to do a spontaneous group session on the spot, but that'll be later. But at this level, if you can get it right by applying this way, you can pat yourself on the shoulder. At least you have understood the responses and you know how to apply them in this mock-up session. Okay, so that will be what I'm looking for. Good news also, for this particular session, it's only 10 to 15 minutes. Unlike an actual session, which is normally an hour or longer, I'm only getting you to plan for a 10 to 15 minute segment of a session. So in my opinion, at this level, it should be doable. It should be doable. Okay. So now, it may appear to be quite cloudy for you. Why? Because I haven't covered these responses yet, isn't it? After I cover all these responses, after I show you the video, after you see what a transcript looks like, this particular component will become clearer for you. I assure you, it'll become clearer for you. That's the reason why, if I were to be you, for your group project, start working on your group paper first. Don't worry about the mock-up session yet. If I were to be you, don't worry about this yet. Just focus on tackling the group paper first. Got it? This one, settle it after we reach the lecture number 5 mark. Then you can start to work on it, basically. But for now, just focus on getting your group together and start working on your group paper. That will be my advice to you for now. Okay, Mira, go for it.
Mr. Lawrence, do we need to come over to TSPP for the
No
mock-up?
need. So you'll be done all online, basically. Already.
Okay. So the mock-up assignment, the mock-up group counseling.
Yes, presentation. Yes.
All of us have to present, or only one of us?
You got it. Okay. So basically, right, let me go back. So now let me go to the details of it. So now let's talk about it. Okay. So here we go. So for the mock-up group counseling session, how would that be done? Here, this part here. Spot. Now, every group, it will be either 5 to 6 people. Now, when you are doing the mock-up group session, you have to decide out of the 5 people, there will be 1 member that will be playing the role of a group counselor. Whereas the other members, you guys will be playing the client that belong to your group paper. What do I mean? Let's say my group paper, I decided to research on effectiveness of group counseling on long-term unemployed people dealing with low self-esteem. Now, when you are doing the mock-up group counseling session, one of you in your group will be the group counselor, while the other 4 of you will now be individuals role-playing to be a long-term unemployed person dealing with low self-esteem. Can you follow me so far, my friends? Okay, I understand. Another example, if I'm researching on effectiveness of group counseling on helping teenagers who are struggling with smoking addiction, guess what? For the group session, one of your group member will be the counselor, while the rest of you will be role-playing different teenager who is struggling with smoking addiction. Can you all follow me so far, my friends? So the transcript has to capture how the group counselor is applying the counseling responses with the other group members. So that will be the challenge for you. Okay. Mira, have I answered your question?
Yes, Mr. Lawrence. One more question, Mr. Lawrence.
Go for it. Yes.
So if is it done separately, as in it's not during our class, or is it?
Okay, coming to that. Good. So, let me just answer it now. So basically, right, your presentation and your mock-up group session will all be done during our final lecture together.
Oh,
so I say again, your group presentation plus your mock-up group session all will be done during our final lecture together, lecture number 9. Now, I did a calculation. Okay, there will be 7 groups. Every group, you are allowed about 20 to 25 minutes. It will be sufficient time for me to clear all the groups within our final lecture together. No problem. So it will be done back to back. Example, come, let me just do it for you in this way. So let's say, for example, Mira's group belongs to group 1. Let's say, for example, group 1. Now, when it's her group's turn, what happens? Her group will first begin to do the group presentation. of 10 minutes. After that, her group will then present to us the mock-up session of 10 to 15 minutes. After that, group 2 will take over and do the same thing. Making sense to all of you? I hope I am. Okay. So we'll keep doing that all the way until we clear all the 7 groups for our final lecture together. Okay. Yes, Steph, go for it.
Lawrence, does that mean like we have to submit the transcript and the PowerPoint before lesson number 9 so that you
Good
can
question.
flash it for
Okay,
us?
now let me make it very simple for you. You can submit the transcript and the PowerPoint on the day itself. Meaning, just before you start your presentation, you can submit to me on the spot. So you can just share on the Zoom group chat. We can all download together, no problem. Now, your group paper has to be submitted 1 week later, 1 week after our final lesson together. So I say again, so PowerPoint slides, transcript has to be submitted on our last lecture. Your group paper latest submission will be 1 week after our last lesson. Got it? So these are the deadlines to remember, basically. Of course, if your group happens to finish your group paper by the live lesson, you're more than welcome to submit it as well. No problem, you can do that. But the latest submission date for your group paper will be 1 week after your 9th lesson with me. So it will coincide with your examination, which I'll cover that later on.
Lawrence, one more question from me.
Go for it.
So you're saying for the mock-up counseling session, we should use content that is under the number 3 of our paper. But then like you said,
no, you'll not be. So your mock-up, right? How you execute the mock-up is based on what I'm going to cover from lecture number 2 tonight all the way until lecture number 5.
So should we input like what, like if we are talking about, like you say, the long-term unemployment, and if we do research and then they say like some sessions you should cover this and this and this, should we also cover that in the mock-up together with the responses?
Sure, got it. Okay, now if you want to, you can. But the key thing to showcase in the short time should be my responses that I taught all of you lecture 2 or to lecture 5. That should be the main thing you should be looking at or showcasing. What's the short time, basically? That's right. Yeah, that should be the main focus. Oh, good, thanks. Other questions? Yes, go for it, Christina.
Okay, yeah, like what Stephanie was mentioning about, right? So for example, like you were mentioning earlier, like for instance, like for research, we have been mentioned that there's supposed to be like 6 sessions and each lecture is supposed to have individual topics, right? So for this mock-up counseling session, right? It can be choose like any one of the session itself, for instance.
You can be. So the key thing here is, right, if I were to be you, there's no need to pressurize yourself to have to apply the contents in your group paper. The major showcasing should be how you are going to be applying the counseling responses I'm going to cover for tonight all the way lecture 5, basically. So that should be the main focus of your mock-up session.
Okay, so for instance, if let's say during the mock-up time, right? For instance, like let's say in the content itself, we have list out like session 1, session 2, session 3, whatever that is actually happening. But during the mock-up presentation itself, mock-up counseling session itself, we accidentally or maybe we have input like session supposedly topics under session 3 and 4, like to make sure it's still okay.
So like I said, that is not the focus. The focus is more on what I'm going to cover. So, okay, Christina, I guess you'll become clearer after you set through the next couple of sessions with me. So it become clearer already. So now it's probably quite hard to imagine because I haven't covered things yet. But after I covered these skills, after I show you the video, I suppose that'll be clearer for you already, basically to envision that.
Okay. Can I backtrack a little bit to the written report itself?
Yes.
There was this conclusion part, right, about the group personal opinion. Do we have to state like this particular opinion is from who, or is it overall?
Overall. That's right. It's overall opinion. You got it. That's right. Yes, you can do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, good. So very important, my friends. If by the time we hit the 5th session, if you are still feeling very blur about the mock-up session, feel free to ask me again. So you can clarify that. What's in my opinion, right? By the time we hit the 5th session, you should become clearer about what's expected in the transcript and what you should be showcasing for the mock-up session by then. I'm pretty sure of that. So by the time we hit there, you should be clearer already. Okay. For now, if it's blur, it's normal. Okay, but by then, it should become a lot clearer by then, I assure you. Okay, all right. Other questions for me about the group project?
Lawrence?
Yes, Eugene, go for it. Yes.
Have everybody form the group first. That's the first
Okay,
thing.
good question. Now, I was going to say this to you. Now, for those of you, thank you so much for writing it to me. Now, for those of you, right, who have sent emails to me about you need to form a group, or you need my help to form a group for you, okay, could I encourage you to stay back after class? Okay, I just want to make sure I got the right people. Okay, so I'm going to just take down all the names again. Then what's going to happen is tomorrow, we will then begin to be forming groups for all of you. Got it? So I just encourage all those who have not have groups to just stay back after lesson. Then we'll just settle that there and then. Oh, thanks. Yes, Jeremy, go for it.
Yeah, sorry. So I just have one question regarding the counseling theory, because like you mentioned to reference it after, I mean, the next 2 lessons you'll cover it, right? But must we cover during our like our paper and our counseling session, right? Must we cover all these different theories, like counseling theories?
Oh, no need to. In fact, right, I intentionally wanted the focus to be different. Meaning, right, the group paper is really about you guys researching on why is group counseling beneficial for the specific client issue and the contents of group counseling sessions. That is the focus for the group paper. Whereas for the mock-up session is where I wanted to really test all of you on what I'm going to cover for the next couple of sessions. So I wanted the focus to be quite different here so that you have more variety as you learn, basically. So it's really about focusing on different things here for the group paper as well as for the mock-up session, basically.
Thank you.
Okay, so much. Okay, good. Now let me continue. Now, for the examination, like I said last week, it will be happening 1 week after our final lesson together. Now, because of the numbers, 36 of you, the examination will be done online with invigilation. For those of you who have done your developmental side MCQ, some of you have done that, right? You probably are quite used to it, that you have to do the paper, correct or not? Then I think there was some technology where, I think Sylvia or Karen, they're also busy looking at you and making sure that you are, doing it, in the right way and whatever not. So the same thing will apply here when we are doing your examination for this particular module. So it'll be done online, basically. Okay. So in terms of the actual focus, we'll talk about it later. Meaning, after I cover that the majority of the sessions, we will talk about the structure of it later. But for now, I can safely tell you that you'll be happening online, basically, for the examination. Final questions for me about the group paper, as well as for now, the examination, how is it going to be delivered, basically? Am I clear?
Sorry, so the examination, when you say online, like the paper will be put online and we just type it out?
You got it, that's right. So there will be more details will come your way later on as the days go on here, right? So I think there will be some, some maybe Dropbox or something, so when the time starts, download it from somewhere, then after that, time's up, submit, the kind of thing. So I think it will be done in that particular way. So more information will come your way as we proceed on through the module. Okay. Jeremy, go for it.
The weightage for the examination will be a 50%.
50% also. 50, you got it. That's right. So 50 for the exam, 50 for the group paper. Or in 100%. Basically. Can? Okay, so we leave this topic for now. Okay. Feel free to ask me questions about this as we go along in our time together. But I assure you, you'll become clearer as we continue on. I assure you that. Okay. All right. Okay, good. So let's continue. So now, for whatever time that we have left, I want to begin to introduce all of you to our next segment of our time together. And next segment will be focusing on skills, focusing on how should we be responding when we are leading an actual group counseling session. Okay, good. So before we talk about the skills part, let me introduce to you other things first. So here we go. Okay, back to my whiteboard. So I can hear something. Hold on, give me a second. Okay, that's good. Okay, go back to whiteboard again. Okay, my friends, whenever you are doing counseling, whether is it individual counseling or group counseling, more often than not, right? At every particular moment in a session, a counselor would usually be considering what should we be doing at every moment in every session, be it individual session or be it group session. So now I'm going to give all of us a quick overview on what are the typical considerations that a group counselor will think about whenever he runs a group counseling session. Okay, so let's talk about it now. Okay, let me draw it out for you. Okay. Now, the first consideration that a group counselor is thinking about is this particular consideration called intent. So what do I mean by intent? Now, the word intent comes from the word intention. So what do I mean? Now, sometimes during group counseling, right? As a group counselor, I may want to be acknowledging what a particular group member is saying in session. What do? This is where one of the intentions in group counseling is to acknowledge. Friends, more often than not, human beings, we always like to feel acknowledged by another person, right? So how can we go about showing acknowledgement to our group members? Well, you probably would have heard of a technique called paraphrasing. You probably would have heard of a technique called summarizing, isn't it? So more often than not, why should a counselor summarize what the client say? Why should a counselor paraphrase what a client say? It's because by paraphrasing, by summarizing, what are we doing? We are acknowledging what we hear from the client, isn't it? So why is acknowledging such an important intent? It's because when group members feel acknowledged, when group members feel acknowledged, they tend to share more. They tend to begin to trust the group more. Got it? So you'll find that for a group counselor, one of the major intents that we want to achieve in any group session is we want to be showing acknowledgement to either a group member or subgroup or even the entire group. Got it? So we'll talk about the techniques that we can use later on. But this is one of the intention that a group counselor will tend to want to be accomplishing. Then there's a second intent. Second intent is what we call to explore. So what do we mean by to explore? Friends, more often than not, right? Clients, when they come, sometimes they will actually be rather vague in their sharing. They may be rather unclear in what they are telling the group. Example, let's say if I'm leading a group for men who uses violence on their wife. Let's say, for example, one particular group member mentioned, oh, Lawrence, you know what? Wives have to be disciplined. Wives have to be put in their place. What's the seven? The statement, wives have to be disciplined. Wives have to be put in their place. It sounds rather vague. It sounds rather unclear, isn't it? What do I do? So now, as I hear this statement from this particular group member, my next response is guided by this particular intention of I want to get this particular group member to further explore, to further share on what he meant by wives need to be disciplined. Can you all follow me so far, my friends? So this becomes another very common intent that guides a group counselor when we are leading any group. Whenever we feel confused as a group counselor, whenever we feel unsure, what do? Our intent in wanting to explore further, our intent in wanting to get the group member to share more will guide us in what we do next, generally. So a very common technique that we use to fulfill the explore intent is by asking a question, isn't it? So towards this guy, I would say, oh, so let's say we call this guy John. Oh, John, you mentioned about wives need to be disciplined. I wonder, when you use the word discipline, what exactly do you mean by that? Simon? As I ask this particular group member to further explore with me what the word discipline means, guess what? I'm already fulfilling this particular intention of further exploration. Can you all follow me so far, my friends? Okay, so these are so far the two intents. Now, there's a third intent that a counselor would want to achieve during group counseling. The intent is this one called to challenge. To challenge. Now, sometimes in group counseling, in order to facilitate our group members to change, we need to be challenging the group member to reconsider about what they think, to reconsider about what they are doing. Because if we, as a group counselor, if we are always a yes man, for example, everything the client say, yeah, you're right, yeah, you're right, yeah, you're right. What happens? After a while, I am not pushing my client forward. I am not challenging my client forward. I am not challenging my client to be considering any change. So you will find that in group counseling, more often than not, as a group counselor, I also want to be fulfilling the intention of challenging. So how will I fulfill that? Well, a classic technique that we use to fulfill this intention is a technique called reframing. Reframing means what? Means I want to begin to challenge the client to change his view from one view to another view, so that by changing his view, he might be challenged to consider about changing his behavior. Example, let's say if I'm leading a group for teenagers who has anger management issues. Let's say a particular teenager say this to the group. Yeah, guys, my mother, wow, super nagging one, you know. Every time tell me something, but tell me at least 10 times. Hiyo, super and super naggy one. What's happening here? The current view this teenager have about the mother is whenever his mother repeats herself, he sees that to be a nag, isn't it? What do? At this junction, I can do some reframing work. What can I do? I can say to the group, oh guys, Matthew just mentioned that whenever his mother repeats herself, he sees that as being a nag. I wonder, guys, besides looking at this as a nag, could there be other views that we can have in looking at Peter's mother's behavior? What am I doing? Now I'm inviting the other group members to consider about other views. Let's say in the group, there's another member called Peter or Matthew, for example. Matthew say, oh, another view could be that Peter's mother was just being concerned. Peter's mother was just showing her love for Peter. What do? Now I can go back to Peter. So Peter, how is it like for you to hear what Matthew just mentioned? That another view that you can consider having is your mom actually cares for you. Your mom actually loves you a lot. Can you follow me, my friends? What just happened? I'm using reframing to achieve the intention of challenging Peter to reconsider about his view at the mother. So that when Peter begins to change his view, I hope that he will also begin to change his behavior towards the mom, especially when the mother repeats herself in the home situation. Are you all still with me up to this point? Okay. So my friends, guess what? So in counseling, in group counseling, right, you will find that a group counselor is always trying to achieve these three intents at different points in any session. Got it? And what we do in achieving these intents, I will cover that next week onwards. Okay, good. Okay, so this is the first consideration. Now let me get to the second consideration, which is, the who consideration. The who consideration. So, do we mean by the who consideration? Well, here comes. When we lead a group, the who becomes a lot more complex. The who here can refer to an individual group member. The who here can also include a subgroup. The who here can also include the entire group. Shall I say again? The who in group counseling tends to be more complex. The who can refer to a specific individual group member. The who can also refer to a subgroup within a large group. The who can also refer to the whole entire group. Can you follow me, my friends? And whoever that I choose to focus on, it will be a decision that I have to make there and then in the group counseling session. Example, huh? Let's say now, I'm leading a particular group of teenagers, let's say, who is struggling with anger management. Let's say, for example, let's say suddenly, right, in the group, in the session, let's say Peter began to cry. Let's say, Peter, out of the blue, he began to cry. What do I do? Now, I have a decision to make, isn't it? Should I now just focus on Peter? If I do that, the who here is, I'm just focusing on Peter, isn't it? But if I do that, I have to think about, would I lose the rest of the group? Can you all follow me so far, my friends? Another example. Let's say, right, Peter starts to cry. Let's say, on Peter's right and left, let's say we call them Mark and John. Let's say Mark and John began to laugh at Peter. Peter, you cry baby, are you? Look at this cry baby. What am I doing now? Now I have another decision to make, which is, should I focus on Peter? That will be what? Individual, right? Or I should now focus on Mark and John, who belongs to the subgroup. Can you all follow me so far? Can you all follow me, my friends? So can you see now, right, how complex it may happen? Because there's always a lot of considerations I have to make, which will then guide me in what I will do next. Now, I could even consider about what? Not even focusing on Peter, not even focusing on Mark and John. I could just focus on what? The entire group. I could say, oh guys, I wonder, as all of you are looking at how Mark and John is teasing Peter, how are you guys feeling? What am I doing now? Now I'm focusing on the entire group. You see that? So this is where, right, the who is something that will guide a counselor in what we do in every session in group, basically. That's what we mean by the who. Okay, so pause a while. So far, you're still with me about the intent consideration and also the who consideration. Okay now. Okay, let me continue. Now let me get to the third consideration, which is this one. Which is the what. The what? Come, let's focus on the what's. Now, what do we mean by the what's? The what here includes things like experience, things like feelings, things like behaviors, things like I say again, the what here refers to experience, feelings, behaviors, and even thoughts. So once again, right, the what will also greatly influence what I do in session. Example, right? Back to my same case again. As Mark and John is busy teasing Peter, "Hi, Peter, cry baby." What do? Let's say now, I decided to focus on Peter. I choose the individual. And I want to get Peter to explore. Explore what? How he feels. I could ask, so Peter, now I look at Peter. Peter, how are you feeling right now as you are hearing all the mean words that Mark and John is saying to you? What am I doing now? So now I am deliberately focusing on the individual group member called Peter, wanting him to explore his feelings. Can you all follow me, my friends? Can you understand that? Or I can change track. Let's say now, instead of me focusing on Peter, I don't. I choose to focus on the rest, the entire group. I could say, oh, the rest of you. I'll say, the rest of you. Okay, now I'm focusing on the entire group. The rest of you, right? What are some of your thoughts as you are observing how Mark and John are teasing Peter? What am I doing now? So now the whole is, I'm looking at the entire group. I want the entire group to explore what are their thoughts as they witness how Mark and John is teasing Peter. I could do that as well. So can you see that all these considerations, right, it will combine to guide a group counselor in what to do at any point in the session. So it happens very fast. I'm doing this like very slow, right? But in the real world, it happens very fast. Because if we don't act fast, before we know it, the ship sail off already. But now, as teaching, right, I'm just slowing it down for you to understand. Can follow me so far, my friends? Good. So that is under the what. Now let me get to, you can see how the time goes, huh? Now let me get to the when. Different color. What do we mean by the when? The when here refers to time zone. When can refer to past. When can also refer to future. When can also refer to present. When can also refer to the here and now. One word for it is called immediacy. Okay. I say again, the when consideration has a few components here. One component could be the past. Second component, the future. Third component, the present. Fourth component, the here and the now. The immediate. So my friends, let me explain this to you a bit more. I'm sure all of you, even though you're new to counseling, you probably will know, right? That in a counseling session, usually we have the liberty to take our group to different time zones, isn't it? So example, back to the example again about the teenage group of anger management. Say, if I want to understand how these teenagers learn to manage anger in their life, I can ask them about the past. So I can say, so guys, could you all share with me how each of you learn how to manage anger since childhood till now? What am I doing? Now I'm getting every member to share with me their past. Can you follow me, my friends? Or I can change track. I could say, so guys, after giving me a good idea about your past, now could I get all of you to think about your future for a moment? So I'll say, okay, in a moment, I would like each of you to share with me, how would you like to be managing your anger in the future? What am I doing now? Now I'm transporting my group to think about the future. Can you all follow me so far, my friends? So once again, it's up to me to play. It's up to me to focus on. It's up to me, right? Now, what then do we mean by the here and now idea? Now, friends, some of you in this room, you are probably quite well versed with mindfulness, isn't it? Mindfulness? Now, the whole idea behind mindfulness is really about being attentive to the moment-to-moment experience in our life. So, sometimes, right, when we become more attentive to our moment-to-moment experience, we may actually begin to gain new insight into our life. In fact, research tells us that a lot of us, me included, we like to spend time on the past or even the future. Most human beings, we don't like to spend too much time on the here and now, because the here and now can be quite scary to stay on. Don't believe me? Try a simple experiment on yourself. Now, if I can read all of your minds now, I can't, but let's pretend I can, okay? I can almost imagine that you are now thinking about either a past thought or a future thought. Means what? Some of you are thinking, when will Lawrence Ho stop talking? I am going to do something later. What is that? That is a future thought. Some of you might be even thinking now, hiya, Lawrence Ho now talk about the mock-up session. What is he talking about? What is that? That is a past thought. Can you follow me, my friends? I'm quite sure that none of you are thinking about right now. How am I feeling right now? I don't think so, isn't it? So this is where, right, in group counseling, we sometimes want to leverage on the here and the now. Back to Peter again, we call it a day. Let's say, go back to Peter. I will ask Peter this question. Let me go back to my whiteboard. So I'll ask Peter. Right. Let's say, recap again. Peter just started crying. Mark and John started teasing him. Let's say now, I decide to focus. Let's say now I focus on Peter, individual. I want Peter to explore. Explore what? Feelings in the here and now. I will ask, so Peter, how are you feeling right now as you hear Mark and John teasing you? So now I want Peter to be mindful about his feelings right now as he hears all the mean words from Mark and John. I hope Peter will say, oh, Lawrence, I feel so hurt. I feel so devastated as they keep teasing me at my expense. What am I doing? I'm hoping that as Peter becomes vulnerable in sharing his here and now feelings, I can now challenge Mark and John. So I will say to Mark and John, so Mark and John, having just heard Peter mention he felt devastated, he felt very hurt by your remarks. How are you guys feeling right now? Notice? So now I shift to subgroup. I'm focusing now on Mark and John. I want them to explore also their feelings in the here and the now as well. Can you all follow me so far, my friends? So that's what we mean by combining all these considerations in guiding our response during counseling. Okay, better pause. Time's up. Up to this point, any questions about the few considerations I just shared? I'm not done yet, no? I still haven't talked about the where yet. Okay, so I'll come to that later. I mean next week, of course. That's right. But for now, are we okay?
Yeah, Lawrence, I still don't understand about the present. So the present is not really immediate, but around
That's
that
right.
time. Okay.
You got it. That's right. So talk about the present also. So present, right, basically is probably not the here and the now, but is present enough. So example, right, it could be, I could say to Peter, so Peter, how were you feeling today just before you came for this group? That will be a question targeting on present day. But it's different from how are you feeling right now as you are crying in front of us. So now the emphasis is on not just today, but right now. How are you feeling? So there's a difference here between present and here and now. Oh, Rebecca, so I hope I was clear. Good, thanks. Right. Okay, comments, questions about what I just covered before I call it a day or a night? Okay, okay. One final comment. So for those of you who needs me to organize groups for you, it'll be good for you to stay back. If not, the rest of you, I'll see you guys back next week for our third lecture together. Thank you so much. Take care. See you all. Bye-bye.
Hi, Mr. Lawrence.
Take care. See you all. Bye-bye. Take care. See you all.